Y'all ready to start? If I could ask everyone to come to attention, we're going to go ahead and get started with our public hearing tonight on the proposed budget for fiscal year 2011. I unfortunately have to report that the mayor is actually very ill with a GI bug. Has been at home in bed all day and actually called me about an hour ago and said that he just felt like he had to be here and he was going to come. And I said, you don't have to talk or anything, just if you can, that would be good. But he has subsequently touched base and he is really feeling bad. So if y'all could keep him in your prayers and thoughts, that would be good. Councilman Fank is en route from North Alabama and hopefully will be joining us shortly. So with that, we tonight are going to have a public hearing, and this is an opportunity for you as the citizens to come before the council and share with us your suggestions, your thoughts, your concerns regarding the proposed budget for fiscal year 2011. We actually had the mayor introduce this last Tuesday at our council meeting, and then this past Tuesday we had a work session over in the Doster Center. So tonight it is your opportunity to come before us, as I said, to give us your thoughts, suggestions, opinions, things that you think are important to share with us. I would ask that you observe a couple of kind of housekeeping rules. I would like to ask that you try to limit your comments to about 5 minutes. If you go over, you know that I'm not going to cut you off unless you go 10 minutes or so, but in general, that's out of respect for everybody so that everybody gets a chance to come before us. And I would also ask that you remember that you're addressing us, the council, so the department heads, who many of whom are here in attendance, are in the audience, but you are addressing us in terms of the communication. And then the final thing that I would ask you to do is just be mindful that we know there's some really challenging issues before us, and some of the proposals that are on the table that are concerning to folks, and it's good not to be too repetitive about the same sort of issue. If someone has said one particular thing about an issue, unless you've got another piece of insight or aspect or angle to it, I would just ask you to be mindful that we are very much in the mode of valuing the input and the feedback and so forth that we get from you, the citizens, because after all, this is your city, and we're here to represent you. And so I just would ask you not to repeat what others have said unless you've got a different angle or perspective on a particular issue. I will ask, as far as the actual process of coming down here, that you raise your hand, and once you're recognized, you come to the podium and you state your name and address for the record, and then go ahead and start speaking. We are taping this, and it will be on the city website. And that, of course, is even more important because we want to make sure that the mayor and Councilman Fank are able to hear the comments directly. So with that, I'm going to ask if whoever wants to start, if you'll raise your hand. Yes, sir, in the red shirt.
My name is Lonnie Brand. I live at 258 Terry Lane. You said make comments. Does that not include asking a question or two?
Yeah, if you've got questions, yeah. Okay. Unfortunately, the mayor is not here tonight to address those, but we'll try to do our best.
Okay. Previously, here in Prattville, I'd just been a tax fee-paying citizen. As long as the city appeared to be running okay, I had no issues with what the government did. But last year I was told that the city's finances were in trouble and that a hole was being dug, and that if something wasn't done, it could even dug deeper. So I wanted to educate myself. So I started attending council meetings of various sorts, started reading budget proposed budgets and past budgets, audited statements, and developing questions of my own. Last Tuesday, just a couple of days ago, I came to my first City Council work session. I thought there was going to be some work being done. I heard a bunch of political statements, but not much in the way of pushing numbers around. And I got the impression that if there was any questions being asked as far as the budget is concerned, they must have been done prior to that work session, because there wasn't seem a whole lot of questions being made. Then I heard Councilman Argo say that as far as he was concerned, he didn't see a legal reason for there to even be a budget. That was the impression I got from his statements. And I was reflecting on that, and I said, well, I remember when there was a President Clinton who was being questioned about his relationship with an intern. One of his responses was, well, it depends on what your definition of is. So since I'm educating myself, I said, well, if there's no legal reason for us, this city, to have a budget, then what's all this financial chaos about? I really don't understand. So I'll come here to ask Councilman Argo to explain to me so I can understand what's the deal on a budget. Does the city, if there's no legal requirement for a budget, then what's the need for a budget? Why is there so much discussion about it? So could you educate me?
President.
Yes, Councilman Argo.
Yes, sir. I'm sure you're well aware. I'm sure you operate with a budget of your house. A budget is a blueprint. It's a spending plan. That's all it is. It's a document that you use to determine how you're going to spend whatever revenue you have come in. My point the other evening is, since there is no law or rule that says you have to have a budget by X date, why are we in such a hurry to try to adopt a budget for the only 6 months left in this fiscal year? My point is, once we have a budget, the city is able to spend money that comes in. And if there is no budget, then the council continues to operate under its spending measure, which says the council has to approve all expenditures or funds, which in my way of thinking, if we're in a financial tight, it's a much better way to keep an eye on what you're spending if you don't have a budget. I don't want to rush into making decisions, and I say rush in the fact that we're trying to put something together by the March 1st date to adopt. That is has a long-term impact on the city when we're trying to fit it into a 6-month window. I just don't think that's the best way to go about it. That's what I meant by my comments the other evening.
Well, I was getting the impression that's what you might have meant, and so I'll do my own little reflection in trying to be educated. I said, well, did Councilman Argo vote on past budgets? I wasn't here at a council meeting in 2009. I wasn't even here on the night that you passed the previous mayor's proposed budget for the next year, which a few weeks later I was here when you rescinded that budget, but I wasn't here when you had discussions about passing that budget. So I said, well, how much time was spent between the budget being proposed and the budget passing for the past several years? Was it more than a month? You were here, Councilman Argo. Was it more than a month for previous budgets? So the mayor proposed the budget, and what was the longest amount of time for a budget was passed, approximately?
3 or 4 months.
Yeah, I mean, in the past, it's been a work that's been over time, 3 or 4 months leading up to it.
It has been 3 or 4 months at the most?
In general, by memory, it's not a real short process. A lot of work goes into it in advance.
Okay, well, since Councilman Argo proposed that there was no legal requirement for a budget, and the rest of the council members heard that statement on Tuesday night, I'm asking you guys, is he right or is he wrong? Is there a legal requirement? And if there's not, then why are we fussing about a budget in the first place?
Well, I think
Anybody have
that
an answer?
the answer is that each of us has a different, perspective on it, and I certainly respect my fellow councilmen, but most of us see a budget as a fundamental operational tool, a roadmap, if you will, to how you do business, and whether that's on a household level, a corporate level, a small business, whatever, a budget is just the basics of how you do business, and you plan, throughout the year, and you monitor your revenue and your expenses. So I think that, at least speaking for myself, that a budget is a very fundamental part of how you do an operation, and make sure that your plans and your expenditures and your revenues all kind of track, and if there are things that need to be followed in terms of trends or otherwise addressed, or adjustments or whatever, that's a tool that gives you a framework in which to do that. So I'm going to ask if you've got any questions about particular elements of the budget that we are considering that you want to share with us.
Well, I had spoke with my district representative about in a previous past budget, and in the what you call that thing, the audited financial report from a previous year, that I had seen the taxes and fees go down from 2008 to 2009, and yet in the one that was being proposed last fall, it had gone up to several $1 million more than what it had been the previous 2 years. And I asked the question, well, if it had gone down from one year to the next, and this recently passed budget by the previous mayor, the proposal, had gone up by several $1 million, where's all this money was supposed to come from? Has anybody ever asked the question, where's all this money supposed to come from? And then with the recent proposed budget, I'm told that the part of the money is going to come from increases in some fees, increases in some taxes. So the question is there going to be enough money to fund this proposed budget, or are we going to be borrowing money to pay for borrowed money again?
Yeah, and that's been the goal, is to look at what the difference is on projected revenue and expenditures, and try to balance those to narrow the gap, so to speak. And so the revenue figure that we're using, aside from the proposed wastewater surcharge and aside from the sales tax increase that is being proposed, is the actual revenue from 2010. So that's what is being used in terms of building the budget that the mayor has proposed.
So since I heard the statement that from a previous person that came up here and spoke, that they had received the answer, hundreds of hours were spent on a previous past budget, and hundreds of hours have been spent on preparing this proposed budget, that we're really looking forward to a clear financial future with the budgets of the future. So is that still the proposal that the City Council is providing, that as representatives of the city, you guys are providing a clear financial picture and a clear way of spending money and a clear way of collecting that money, so I can just go home and sleep peacefully at night?
I believe that's our goal, yes.
And then if a year from now, that's not the goal, that's not what happens, how should I respond if I want to be a concerned citizen of Prattville?
At that point in time, you can come down here and talk to us. You can talk to your individual councilman. Whatever at
like
that
I
point
said,
in
I'm
time
trying to
is.
educate myself. That's the reason I'm asking these questions.
Yeah, but I can tell you we want a balanced, sound budget that is workable, sustainable, and puts the city on sound financial footing.
I asked my district representative about Councilman Strickland's proposal of a cash flow statement, and his response to me was he thought that was a good idea. Does anybody else consider a cash flow statement except him and the one that I asked individually as a reasonable idea, or has it got some shortcomings I need to know about?
No, I think that that's something that Councilman Strickland has brought to the awareness of the council, and we actually have already asked our interim finance director to start working to put that sort of a document together. We very much value Councilman Strickland's financial background and that expertise that he's going to bring to the council and the city.
So when I was being told last year that there were financial concerns, and I started attending council meetings and reading items more closely because I wanted to educate myself, you're saying that part of that education will be that as I spend more time, I will gain more confidence in what's going on financially in this city.
I definitely hope so. I definitely do.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, David.
Good evening. My name is Dave Burns. I live at 150 Shady Oak Lane. Tom Miller, you're my city councilman. You've served me well. And I just wanted to come and voice my opposition to the sales tax. I understand and really have thought about and considered your position on the other side. I have considered that, and I know how hard a decision that you have to make and how much work has been done to this point, and I appreciate that. But my thoughts is I don't feel like that the sales tax increase is the answer, and it may be. But here's what I want to know, and I know you can't answer it. This is a rhetorical question. If the process has been to the point that you know where the money is spent. I looked at the budget. I think there's about 41 pages. I didn't go through all of it. But I understood the task that you have, and I wanted to know, has there been a study that says this is what percentage is our matter of our wages, benefits? This is what our income, this is where we're spending just simple financial procedures. I'm not an accountant. But here's why I'm concerned about that. Now, I borrow this from, it's not original to me. You've probably heard of Dave Ramsey. And he uses a phrase in reference to a consolidation loan. And he builds from that he says, consolidation loans, and he builds on the word con. And he said most of the time people, when they don't make right decisions to stop the debt, they really are become conned at that point. And I'm asking you as a city council to look, and I'm sure that I'm confident you have, to look, are there measures that we're doing, that we're making, that will put us on a sound footing? I don't think it is productive at all to go back and blame the past administration. Even I know that it has an effect, but we can't blame the economic conditions for all of it. I think we have to think about what brought us to this point. And I agree in the work session. I really agreed with Councilman Argo's two suggestions. The one suggestion, he felt like that you would be taking away a competitive advantage we have in the river region by increasing our sales tax. I also understood his suggestion of coming up with an authority for waste management. To me, and I have not studied it, to me, I really feel like that is a good option. The response from our mayor, and I understood this, and I have what I call pride in Prattville, is I understand the value of keeping city employees. But as an employee, if they're able to be an authority, maybe not a city employee, but be an authority, would have a better future in their job. I had an opportunity, if you could call it an opportunity, in 1995. I went through a RIF. And I understand the people that's behind me and the department heads. I understand what you ask them to do, because we all need our jobs. And we have so many other factors coming in. I mean, and this is no fault or blame of you, it's just making a point. Gas went up 3 times a day. And for me to think as a citizen, and I know this issue will not be a public referendum. I understand that. But here's what I would ask you as a city council. If this went to a public vote, how would the citizens of Prattville vote? Now, you serve us by doing that. In my place of service, I serve in a place that I'm responsible for public monies. You are in a responsible place that you are serving us and overlooking public monies. And really, in my thoughts, when you are responsible for public money, that is more important than you being responsible for your personal money. And I just want you to consider, have we got to the point that we're doing something because we feel like that we're forced? And friends, I do understand the position you're in. And I really want to be seen as a friend. And I know you have a hard decision. But please think about how that I will serve the public in that vote. Thank you for your service.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Mr. Ray?
Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Mike Ray. I live at 640 Mimosa Road. Several years ago, I think 1, 2, 3 councilmen here had the opportunity to inherit approximately $5 million of reserve from the late David Whetstone. And that feat was not accidentally achieved. It was done by good, sound financial decisions. And the main reason behind that was to make a budget that was based on past year's revenues. And if your economy is growing, then you'll enjoy a surplus. But even at doing that, you always had to keep your eye on trends. Which way is the economy trending? And in this economy, even if you did that, you based it on past year's revenues, you would still have to trend anticipated revenues down because of the outside factors that we will be facing here in the very near future, the main one being cost of energy. It's going to bring our economy to a screeching halt. So you're trying to enact Plan B. You better be looking at Plan C, because it's going to get worse. Now, you're basing your budget on a $33 million anticipated revenue. Is that, what was last year's revenues? I forgot.
It's $30.1 million, Mr. Ray. 30.1 million was the actual revenue.
Okay, so what you're doing, and presenting this budget is you're probably, more than likely, using just mere logic, and that's all I'm armed with, that's going to fall short. You're going to get further in the hole. So right away, your budget is inadequate. It's a lie. It's a farce. And no disrespect intended, but it's just the harsh reality. Now, I would suggest to you, and just a suggestion, I'm just a citizen, you have to make that decision yourself. You need to go back and you need to start looking where you can save some more money. Now, the sad part about that is the personnel costs are so high, it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt bad. You gentlemen had an opportunity to deal with this years and years ago when citizens came up to you and begged you, please don't borrow this money. But you chose to ignore us. So now we're going to have to pay, and pay dearly for it. And it hurts me terribly. I have many friends that work for the city, and it's just sad to know that they're going to be facing an unknown future because of the decisions that have been made by this body. But they're going to have to be made. Some of you have had the epiphany and you understand the harsh reality of this. You know it's real. You know it's true. But I think some of you don't really understand it. When you make statements like you don't have to have a budget, there is no law that requires that you have to have a budget. That's true. But common sense dictates that you do. It sets the boundaries. Now, if you make a budget and you have no intention of following it like it has been in the past, then you're right. Why waste your time? But if you intend to follow the budget will keep you out of trouble. It will let you know where you're going. It's just like setting goals in life. That's what it is. It's a goal. It's one that you strive to attain. So you do have to have a budget, and you have to have one immediately, because your city is hemorrhaging to death. It's hemorrhaging money. And the longer we hemorrhage money, the sooner we will head over that cliff into the abyss, into bankruptcy. So this is no time to pussyfoot around. You have to be decisive. You have to be realistic. Coupled with a realistic budget, gentlemen, I would also like to ask you to come up with a strategy, or if you're George Bush, a strategery. But come up with a strategy that will ensure that you meet your goals in that budget. And I hope one of them is, because of the precarious situation this economy is in, one of them is to partner with the businesses in this community and nurture them and have regular meetings with them, along with the Chamber of Commerce, to find ways to keep the money that we spend in this city, to educate the people, to let them know if you love this community so much, you'll try to save it by spending your money here. Everybody needs to bail the boat out. Everybody needs to grab a bucket and save this great city that I've had the great honor and privilege of living in for the good part of my life. So I hope that's in your plans, because it's going to be like a domino if one of these large retailers, and from what I understand, it's looking precarious for them. You need to nurture them, because if that domino falls, then everything else collapses on top of it, because you're going to be handed a set of keys and say, I'm sorry, we can no longer pay for this building. It's yours now. And you can't even pay your vendors. How are you going to pay for a building that's empty? So, gentlemen, I'm talking about a plan C. Plan B is not going to work, and that's what you're looking at right now. You need to skip it and go to plan C. Now, I do realize, and I'm going to try to summarize this, because I know you have a lot of people that want to speak, but I think this is very important, and I appreciate you bearing with me. This city right now is so very close to failure, and I don't think anybody's willing to admit it. But something has to be done real quick. Now, I do not like the idea of a sales tax. But unfortunately, I'm going to have to hold my nose and support it. Because time, write it down, Mr. Argo. Yeah. I'm not running again, so it won't matter. But we have to have it, because if we don't, two things are going to happen. We'll be in default, and more people will lose their jobs. So we have to have that in the short term. But may I suggest to you, and I hate to even suggest this, but it's probably the most realistic way to handle it, and one that will offer the least amount of negative impact to the businesses in this community, is to have that as a temporary measure, coupled with a possible property tax increase, one that's more stable, one that's not tied to fluctuations in the economy. Because I don't want to go back and listen to y'all say that, hey, we're going to have to raise it another 1 cent because the economy is going to go down, or because fuel prices are so high we don't have outside people coming in here to shop any longer. It's a vicious cycle, and I don't think it's going to work. I think it's going to be counterproductive. I don't think that 1 cent sales tax is going to reap the benefits that you anticipate it is. And here we go back again, gentlemen. We're talking about realistic numbers. We're talking about dealing with the reality of the situation. Couple your decision with logic. So, that being said, gentlemen, you might want to look at some kind of millage rate increase now. It's no secret that the millage rate in the state of Alabama, and in particular this community, is so low that we have outside investors coming into this state and buying up property as an investment, because they will realize the greatest profit margin, because their profits won't be going to taxes. So they're snapping up our property. Probably not so much now, since no one has any money to invest anymore. But that's what the trend was in the past. So I hate to say it, I don't like it. I don't want to pay any more taxes, but I do want to save my city. So if you couple that sales tax with the provision that it will end upon the passage of a sales tax, pardon me?
You said coupled, it would end, did you mean with the passage of a millage?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay.
And that way we can get our sales tax back into a reasonable area, and to where it would encourage people to come to this community and shop. There would be a benefit to it. And that's even more critical with the cost of fuel going up. Nobody's going to drive anywhere to save a few dollars if it costs $10 for gas. That's that logic thing I was telling you about. So, gentlemen, that's all I have to say. I don't envy you. I can't help tell you I saw it coming. I think we all did. But I appreciate if you consider my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Ray.
Thank you.
Can I just see a show of hands of how many people are interested in talking? Okay. Yeah, next. I do that only because I want to remind people most of the speakers have gone 10 or 11 minutes, and I mean, we'll be here as long as you guys want to be here, but good evening.
Good evening, City Council and gathered citizens. My name is Stephen Brooks, 167 West Main. As a small business owner, I've spoken before in front of you, and I would ask you to reconsider the 1 cent sales tax. Having said that, I would consider that a negative statement. To negative statements, you should give suggestions. What I offer, again, is have a look at 1/4 cent or 1/2 cent. Keep us competitive with the river region. Give us a little bit of an advantage. I'd like to say a couple of comments about some of the things that you have done, that are absolutely outstanding. It's a little bit difficult to say these things, given that I wanted to do some research and come up with something, and I'll be darned this morning if the Selma Times-Journal didn't hand me just what I needed. On their front page, in a little article down here, it says, Phoenix Park completion is near. Now, what on earth does that mean to me as a businessman here in Prattville? Phoenix Park. Nancy Smith, who serves on the Selma Dallas County Historic Society Board, a board of which I also sit on, came up and looked at our park here, took that idea back to Selma, and has made a reality. And that's from your work in keeping our community up downtown. Why do I say this? Because I encourage you to go forward and keep with, and I have to use the word, beautification of the downtown area. This is what's bringing tourists, Montgomery folks, Birmingham folks, Georgia, Mississippi, and one of my sales just this past weekend went to North Dakota. They love our downtown historic area. They like the way it looks. So I encourage you, the work that you have done, the work that Ken Johnson and his horticultural crew downtown has done is absolutely sterling, and please consider strongly to keep those folks and that quality of the business community in place in the upcoming budget. That's our branding. In retail, you can think of dozens of examples, crazy ones, GoDaddy Girls, Polar Bears for Coca-Cola, whatever one you want to put in there, Mounds Bars, whatever. But our branding downtown for our business district is the beauty of our downtown area. I implore you to keep those things in place. Give us a fighting chance, which I know you will, to stay competitive in the river region. And thank you for your work keeping that up, because it really does look good. Thank you for your time, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Who wants to be next? Yes.
Good evening.
Hi.
I'm Cheryl Browder. I live at 746 Smith Avenue. Through the last several weeks, my mind has frequently gone back to our founder, Mr. Daniel Pratt. I don't know how many of you are aware that his intent in founding this city was to create something different than what he had found in the North, where industrial cities were tiny, cramped, dirty, and people couldn't own their own homes. He deliberately planned the city so that workers could own their own home, have a place their children could play, and they could plant gardens to help with their sustenance. He also built churches. There are still houses downtown that he had built for the workers to be able to enjoy. What I keep thinking about when I hear the 1 cent sales tax and the additional $10 fee is those employees, both city employees and non-city employees, who make a low enough wage that they struggle just to meet the basic minimum of a modest lifestyle. And particularly those city employees who make that lower wage, if they then must, on top of taking a cut in pay, have to pay the additional tax and the additional $10, you're putting people at risk. And I would hate to see that happen. That would be very much opposite of what Mr. Pratt intended for this town. Another thing that I would like to say is, and in following up on what the gentleman before me said, I do agree with many of his points. Have we looked at all the possible ways of increasing revenue? Have the businesses who have enjoyed the largesse of this city budget in the past years, have they been asked to step up and make contributions? Many of the other organizations, I looked at the September budget and then again at this one, and I have to say, I really like a lot of the things that were done. It was a tough job, and I think a lot of the things that needed to be targeted were targeted. But I saw in that September budget many organizations that were apparently have been for some time getting donations from the city. Have those organizations been approached and asked, can you help us meet this need? What can you do? What about the citizens? I can pay that 1 cent sales tax. I can pay that extra $10 fee. Wouldn't like it, but I can do it. Is it possible that citizens or citizen groups could pull together and come up some way of helping to contribute toward paying down the budget? Are there options there available for us? Some of the organizations in town, my high school class has been very close. I wonder if they might be willing to come up with a project to try to find a way to contribute funds to place on that debt. And I would like to ask you to consider that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Browder. Ms. Maliska?
My name is Deborah Maliska. I live at 710 Running Brook Circle. Some of the things that I would like to bring up is there a way to cut some way over limit salaries? There are some people working in the city who are making a whole lot more than they should and not doing the job correctly. Forced retirement for those who have been with the city for a long, long time and they're due to retire, but they keep hanging on. Using prisoners. We have a whole bunch of them sitting over there. We're paying their bills. We got a roof, food, cable. Why can't we use them to make up for where we lose an employee or where employees have to cut their wages? I'd like to know how many of you would be willing to give up your salaries to help cut this budget and put us in the black. You're asking an awful lot of these citizens, and a lot of us don't have a lot of money. But, you know, we're not in a position to argue. Things get passed. We don't get asked. We just get handed the bill. And I think we've been footing the bill for quite a long time. I'm a new homeowner, and in order for us to buy the home that we got, we had to budget. We had to cut out a lot of things that we enjoyed, just like every other household. Why can't this city cut more off of this budget? Your legal fees. Looking over the budget, McDowell gets an awful lot of money as a retainer for representing this city. Each department has their own charge. When I was working for lawyers, they paid one retainer fee for the entire city, not one for each and every department. That's a lot of money. There are a lot of ways to cut back without us having to foot the bill. And one thing I'd like to know is, ever since I've been coming here, I talked to everybody, and I watched you pass resolutions that Jim Byard presented to you. There were never any questions asked. It was just passed until that $3.1 million. And then everybody started asking questions. I've got one. What's going to happen May 1st? Are we going to owe $6.2 million? Or are we going to owe $3.1 million? What happened to the loan that we took out to pay it before? Has it been paid? Or are we going to pay it? Nobody's going to loan the city any money to pay anything else. I wouldn't if I was a bank. There's so many ways to cut back. Think about what you do at home, in your own household. When money's tight and your kids come to you and say, I want to go to the movies, or I want to do this, or I want to do that, what do you tell them? We don't have the money. We have to cut back so we can save. Why can't the city do that? There's a lot of places to cut. Everybody has to be willing to give, not just the citizens, department heads, all kinds of people. There's a lot of money out here. But unless we budget like we do at home, then we're not going to get anywhere. I don't like paying more in sales taxes. I don't like paying more in property taxes. But those are things that you say we have to do. And we trust you guys because that's what we elected you to do. Look out for our best interest. So far, I'm not seeing a whole lot of it. I know I have been up here and I've talked about a lot of different things since the beginning of the summer. But one thing I did notice that I would like to see all of you correct is when the citizens come up here and talk to you and bring you a real problem that needs fixing, don't just kind of glare up at the ceiling and then the citizen walks away and they never hear from you guys again. Nothing gets done. And that's kind of the way it's been. Is that the way that the finances are handled? I think that at the end of every month, there ought to be the statement of income and bills. So we can see that it's budgeted every single month. Y'all have a responsibility to every citizen in this town. And that's something I don't see a whole lot of. There's no respect. You just take it for granted. Well, we'll raise it and they'll pay it. They ain't got a choice. We do. We put you in office, we can take you out. So I encourage every single one of you to look deep. Look at the cuts in this budget. Do we really need that much for this or that or the other? Police officers, when my dad was a cop down here, they had enough cars for the first shift. They would turn it in. The second shift would drive them. Nobody drove their cars home. Nobody. There are an awful lot of vehicles from the fire department, the police department. There shouldn't be that many. We don't have that many police officers. We've got cars for them to drive home. Where's that money going? Couldn't we cut back there? All these big fancy vehicles, this SUVs and the Suburbans riding around. Do we really need those? Can we cut back? Gas is getting higher. These guys taking their car, who pays that gas bill? Do they fill up before they go home? Do they drive it anywhere else? Why can't it stay here? Save money. Cuts back on insurance and everything else. We have got to look at this and cut. Because you're asking the citizens to pay here. But I don't see where the city's cutting back. We got department heads that make way too much money. Are they willing to sacrifice for what's been happening here? I know this mess didn't happen overnight, but there are responsible parties. And why can't we hold them responsible for what they did to the city? I think that this council ought to have to approve every single solitary expenditure until we are in the black. Because until we do that, it's not going to get anywhere. And these people out here, we deserve a right to know exactly where every penny is being spent. And we have a right to see it every month that shows that we're getting more money or things are leveling out. Don't keep us in the dark until, like, the bond that came due November 1st. That was a big shock to everybody. But y'all sit on this council. Y'all should have known that. You should have been aware. If they weren't giving you the information, my mom and dad always told me, if you have a question, there's got to be an answer. You just have to look for it. I don't take anything for granted anymore. Somebody tells me it's raining outside, I'm going to go look out the window to make sure. If you tell me that I owe you $1,500, I want you to show me where I owe you $1,500. I'm not going to let anybody tell me, just pay it and don't worry about it. I'm not going to do it. I don't have the money. It took us a long time to save for our home. I'm 50 years old. This is my very first home. And I'd like to keep it. I worked really hard for it. My husband worked really hard for it. This is our old age for us. This will be our home until we die. And I'd like to be proud of my home and the city I live in like I have been since we moved here when I was in the 3rd grade. I love this city. I love everything about this city. You cannot go anywhere else and find this. You can't go to California and find it. You can't go anywhere and find what we have here. But it's mutual respect. We respect y'all, and we ask that you respect us. So think about where else we can cut. If you need some just straight out recommendations, I can give them to you. But I do believe that a statement at the end of every month showing where we are, I think we all deserve that so that we know where our money's going. I mean, we're paying it. We might as well know where it's going. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Maliska. Dr. Simmons? Just again, we're nearing an hour, and I just want to remind folks, I saw several hands, when I asked for a show a while ago, and just be mindful that, there are people waiting behind you.
Dr. Jerry Simmons, 141 North Chestnut Street in Prattville. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. A couple of comments that I heard at the work session I wanted to clarify on budget. I know there was a talk about budget, where should it be? Do we need one? What's the function of it? And I just wanted to remind you that the budget, where should be a realistic number. So that's the number one, and I think Councilman Bowles hit on it last October when he was looking at that $37 million as to whether it's realistic. And it needs to be based on sound assumptions, because that's real important. And of course, the other thing is that it's flexible. So if after several months we see that everything isn't going as planned, there's nothing cast in concrete with a budget. You can alter your budget. And it needs to be consistent. It needs to be consistent with your goals, with your strategic plan, and what your mission is for the city. So keep that in mind. I'm going to give you a short analogy about a sick patient, and don't worry, we won't go into things like root canals, but we've got a sick patient. In this case, it's the city, and unfortunately the carotid artery has burst, and the patient is down. And in this particular case, the excessive bleeding, of course, is spending. And so we've got to do something, and you've only got a couple of options. So you could sit and panic and hope that the artery closes, but that's not likely. You could do some studies and drop back and be overly cautious, and the patient will probably bleed out and die. You could put a tourniquet on, but that's not going to be real good, since they'll probably suffocate. Or we can do a slow compression, where we actually start to slow the bleeding down, in this case the excessive spending. But that alone isn't going to work, because you're going to need infusion, obviously, with infusion of IV fluids and blood. So in this case, you're going to need revenues, and as everyone said, nobody likes taxes, but no one's presented any plan that I can see where we can avoid the taxes. So I'm as cautious as everyone else, and I like to act in a prudent manner and in a non-impulsive manner. But the bottom line, as Mr. Ray said, we're hemorrhaging, and we've got to act now. We've only got 7 months left to realize some savings. So we've got to enact some taxes. We've got to cut spending. We've got to get stabilized. Once we're stabilized, then I've got some other ideas. Now, there was a mention by Councilman Argo to privatize the wastewater. And he said that there's a $600,000 deficit and that there's $2 million in infrastructure needs. Well, guess what? If we privatize this to some authority, they're going to obviously not operate in the red. They're going to want to increase their infrastructure by several $1 million. So all that's going to really do is pass on increased fees, and we're going to lose control. And I'm not against privatizing in selected areas, but an oversimplification would be that we would privatize most of the departments that you have right here, and we would give the mayor a big scissors, and he would walk around and just cut ribbons all day, and we would manage some outsourced contracts. But I don't think that's what you want, and I certainly don't think the citizens want to hire a mayor and a council and we could privatize everything. So what do I recommend? I think that since there's only so many hours in a day for you and for the mayor, I think we need to form committees. Mayor Byard said that he didn't know there were so many experts out here in the audience when we talked about the roof. But I think he failed to realize that behind me are experts, or at least people with good experience in every area, everything from finance to sanitation to wastewater to law to medical. And why don't we utilize them? Because there just aren't enough hours for you. Why don't we form committees? And I'm talking maybe small committees. If you feel you want to put a councilman on each committee, let's do that. And let's look at a number of areas. Let's look at wastewater to see whether we should or shouldn't. Let's look at garbage. Let's look at insurance. We're spending over $3 million on insurance just for employees alone. Let's look at debt. Can we restructure some of the debt and save some money? Let's look at the golf tournament, because I'm not opposed to golf, but I don't know how you're going to look an employee in the face and say, we have to lay you off, but we're going to go spend X number of thousands of dollars to keep a relationship with the LPGA. That's going to be a tough one. So we can look at golf, but it only needs to be in as so far as we earn revenues back that we can make it cost neutral. Let's look at parades. I ran the parade for 3 years, the Christmas parade. It was run on a cost neutral. We actually made money, and I reinvested the money back for next year's parade. So let's look at parades. So there's a bunch of experts. The second recommendation, I know you've talked about going to the examiners of public accounts for an audit. My experiences have not been good with the examiners for public accounts, both on the dental board level, and I looked at 2 audits that they did concerning the Billy Brown trial. We had 2 audits covering 1-year periods similar, and in the first audit there were only 2 discrepancies found. Now when it came time for the Billy Brown audit, there was page after page of alleged misappropriation of funds. Now this was the same organization auditing the same jail. So I know that some of you said, well, the examiners won't cost us anything, and the only comment I make is that sometimes you get what you pay for. I fully recommend that if they do have some findings, and they won't do a comprehensive audit, they'll only look at selected areas, I recommend that we hire a firm to do a forensic audit, that we unturn over every major rock so that we know what we're dealing with, that we have accountability. And probably the most important thing is that we put in controls and preventive measures so that we are not facing these kinds of things again, so that we're not back here a year from now saying, why didn't we know? Each of the restricted funds should have a separate bank account, because you see, I can show you any accounting report that says that there's $750,000 in the fuel tax, but it's real hard for me to get a bank statement that shows you that there's 750. So there needs to be dedicated bank accounts for each restricted fund, and you need to have access, all of you, to look at those accounts. And that way we can prevent some of these things. So I know I've covered a lot, but I think it's important that we not repeat the mistakes of the past. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Simmons. The gentleman in the back.
Hello, I'm Don Whittington. I live at 1457 Upper Kingston Road in Prattville. This is actually the first council meeting I've ever been to. I've lived in Prattville my entire life, and I just guess I always assumed that the council people were down here doing a good job along with the mayor, but boy, was I surprised when I learned that we're in a bad financial mess. You know, I'm afraid to say that I think the reason that we're in such a bad mess is because of pride and arrogance. You know, we like that moniker of being the preferred community, but that our reputation has taken a huge hit with this, you know, revelation of and how bad a shape we are. And it's incumbent upon each of you gentlemen to look at yourself in the mirror and make sure that you do the right thing. I know we've heard a lot of suggestions tonight, and I, for one, am not wild about extra taxes or fees or all of that stuff, but there's things that definitely have to be done. But I think cost cutting is the number one thing that has to be done. And, you know, I was sitting back there listening to the other people talk, And I don't know that I have ever participated in anything that the Department of Leisure Services do. I don't go to the pool. I've not been to the movies that they show out here. So that might be a department that could be done away with. Because, listen, when money gets tight, our having fun kind of has to take a back seat. So, that might be something that we really need to look at. It's things like that. And the lady that spoke about cutting the waste of police cars. I can't tell you the number of times that I've pulled up to convenience stores and parking lots and police cars are running minute after minute after minute after minute. Do they not know there's switches that turn these vehicles off? I don't understand all of the engine running on police cars so much. But there's some tough decisions, guys, that y'all have to make. And it's going to be incumbent upon y'all to get rid of the pride, get rid of the arrogance, and make some decisions that's going to be tough for all of us to stomach. I mean, let's be honest here. This is a situation where that unless you increase revenues tremendously, we're going to be in debt for a long time to come. If I understood it right, the lady that gave the report a week or so ago, we're $60 million in debt. That's a lot of money. And I guess my main thing that I wanted to find out when I stepped up here, what was the logic in the thing about giving these businesses these tax rebates? What's the logic behind that? Please help me understand. We're giving $10 million back to Bass Pro, and the rumor around now is that they may be closing their doors. Are we still going to owe them $10 million if they close? But how can we give these businesses tax rebates? Because that's the only way besides fees that the city makes money. And we actually give them our only way of income just to have them to come as a business in our town? It doesn't make any sense to me. And the other gentleman that just spoke about golf. I mean, come on. We're paying over $200,000 to have golf? Does that make sense to anybody? I mean, we've got to start thinking rationally, folks. And like I said, I'm afraid that our former mayor and you guys that's been on this council, we had this thing about being the preferred community, but now we're sort of a laughing stock in the area. And I, for one, don't want us to continue being a laughing stock. If some drastic changes are not made, we might be going down and can never recover. And I've been involved in a bad situation in this town. I was in the middle of the Daystar issue, and all of us remember that horrible, horrible experience. And I'm getting the same kind of feeling about this situation with the city now that I had while we were dealing with the Daystar thing. People that we trusted at Daystar to handle the people's money either were asleep at the wheel or something, and things got out of control. And y'all know what happened to Daystar, don't you? The building was lost. The church was lost. The building was lost. And please don't let that happen to our city. Thanks.
Yes, sir. Yeah, you. Yeah, Chief Holland.
I'm Steve Holland, 545 Upper Kingston, Mr. Tripley's neighbor. Just want to throw that in there. I just got a couple of points that I'd like to bring up, Mr. Miller. First is 30.1 million is our actual money. I'm asking you, let's operate with 30.1 million, not the 33, not no projected. And if there's cuts, let's do it now and hurt so we can start the healing process, and we won't keep rolling this forward. just as an example, when my daughter was born, I had to downsize from my new car and buy me a $700 Plymouth Duster, okay? Because I wanted my child to have things that I could provide instead of me riding around in a fancy car. So we've got to do the same thing. I was fortunate. I was a city employee, and I thank God for allowing me to work for the city. I'm retired. Nationwide, there's pain, there's uproar, there's a lot of selfishness being displayed in the state of Wisconsin. Y'all have seen it on the news. It's time for all of us to come together, and we all going to have to hurt, whether we're a city employee or we're the private sector, and we got to ante up. So I'm asking you, Mr. Miller, Mr. Argo, Mr. Wood, 59% and we'll get it. We got to bring that number on down. And I love them, but they got to hurt until we get this straightened out and operate with a snapshot every 4 months. Take a look at where we stand and then tweak it. Look at the budget and tweak it. And the comment was made that the monthly statement. Y'all have got to have that to know if vendors are being paid, if we've overspent, or if we're underspent and we're kicking a little bit back, like you said, in a reserve fund, exactly what we need to do, plan for a rainy day. And please, let's not operate ever again in a deficit. I don't know if it's legal or not legal, but I never did get to operate in a deficit at home. I know President Obama does, but we in the preferred community, let's $30.1 million. That's all I got to ask. And let's make it hurt now and get it done and over with. Got a comment on the ad valorem tax. I don't mind increasing my millage, but by God, I need to have an accurate appraisal of my home and not some shot from the hip saying your home is 25% valuable this year than it was last. Thank you for your time, and I'm behind you if y'all do the right thing.
Thank you, Mr. Holland. Ms. Finnegan. Ms. Cummins, you want to be next?
My name is John Lee Finnegan. I live at 211 Deer Trace Street. I would first like to start with questions regarding the work session just held on Tuesday. I did attend the session and also listened to the video, and I do thank Mayor Gillespie very much for having that taped. And my questions are directed to Mr. Argo. At that meeting, you stated, "We're trying to piece together a budget that I once upon a time said was going to be solid and sustainable. And obviously that fell apart because we didn't have correct information. We have the correct information now." Mr. Argo, you were president of the council and the chairman of the finance committee when that budget was being considered, and I believe in those positions for 12 years until you just lately stepped down from them. It seems then that you should be very, very knowledgeable about the city's budgets. So going back to that statement, my question is, why didn't you know you didn't have the correct information, and who was responsible for providing that correct information?
I'm glad you asked.
Thank you.
Absolutely. The reason that this council is in the situation it's in is that we were given financial numbers. None of us are professional accountants. None of us have the option of taking a budget statement and going, you know what, I think I'm going to get all of the bank documents and all of the revenue numbers and go home and sit down with a calculator. We have to rely on those that we employ to give us the accurate numbers. That's the reason we're in the situation that we're in. I operated from the numbers that I believed to be accurate, and they were not. That's why we are where we are tonight.
And who was responsible for giving you that information, the correct information?
Those that we employ.
Okay. Another statement you made was regarding whether the proposed $33 million amount is the optimum number we need to be at. What is the number we need to be at in order to effectively provide services to the citizens? And unfortunately, we don't have that information in front of us. We don't have a document. We don't have an individual. We don't have guidance from the leagues of municipalities. The only thing we can go from is based on our experiences and based on the information provided by others in order to craft together a document from which we can work from. So my question to you is, why wouldn't you have always needed this same type of information when crafting all the previous budgets? Has the city just been guessing all this time?
I will answer that question this way. I am one of 7 members. I voted my conscience. I believe the information placed before me was accurate and true. Now, when you ask why haven't we always operated that way, trust is a funny thing. You give it to people and you hope that they will honor it. But when it's not, you don't give it to them again. I won't make that same mistake twice.
I just find it very interesting how much you are questioning this budget when if you had been so diligent with the others, we might not have been in this situation. I would like to now talk about the budget, if I may. My main question is based on the January 4th council meeting. President Miller, you explained that the budget needs to be based on realistic revenue projections using an average of the past 3 years, which is $30,200,000. I see this budget is based on approximately $33,664,000 revenue. Why is the change?
That includes the proposed wastewater surcharge and sales tax increase.
Okay. I'm only going to touch on a few items. I do have a huge list of questions as I compared Mayor Gillespie's budget not only with Byard's, but also with the 2009-2010 budget. I'm hesitant to submit it, though, as the last time I did this for a budget, it wasn't received very well. So I just have a few questions I hope you can answer. On revenues, page 2, miscellaneous income is listed as $212,272. What is this from?
I would have to ask Interim Finance Director, Mr. Mosley. If you can come to the mic so the whole audience can.
There's a $150,000 grant in that number that is reflected in the capital outlay in the engineering department where the expense goes.
And that grant is
That is the Opticom system that has already been approved by the council.
Okay.
And there's also a fire grant in there, I believe. There's another grant in there for $20,000 to $30,000.
Okay. Also, I noticed on page 2 that there's no firefighters grant of $300,000 that has always been in the other budgets. I just wondered why all of a sudden that disappeared.
I would
Because that was in Byard's and the 2009-2010.
We apply for several grants during the year, and that is included with the offsetting expense also in there. We took that out to clear the air so it doesn't look like we're inflating the revenue numbers.
Okay, thank you. A couple more. Regarding workman's comp for all departments, executive, legislative, finance, city clerk, human resources, judicial, IT, and creative arts have all increased from the 2009-2010 budget. Yet, vehicle maintenance, engineering, planning, street, sanitation, wastewater, police, fire, and leisure services have all decreased. It just seems to me it would be the other way around considering the type of work those latter departments do, and I don't quite understand why that change has happened, why there's an increase.
I would ask Mrs. Thrash, HR Director.
Yes, we actually budgeted differently this year for work comp, and the reason we did that, we actually came closer to the calculation that we were actually billed from Millennium Risk Managers, who are a work comp carrier. Typically, companies bill based on classification, like Ms. Finnegan mentioned, and we found that we were way off budget when we did that. So we actually budgeted per employee based on the actual billing to achieve a more accurate budget.
Thank you.
All right. It also seems there, and also executive, finance, city clerk, human resources, judicial, engineering, planning, police have legal services listed. What are these for? What are the legal services for each of those departments? You know?
The way my contract is with the city is any billable hours for things outside of this. City gets sued for police brutality, whatever it may be, then I handle that. So when I submit the bill, believe they'll send it to the police department and attribute it to the police department. So whatever the file that may exist, whether it be police or fire, that's where it'll be sent to.
So it's budgeted across the departments that
Correct.
would be. And Ms. Thrash, did you want to add?
Yes, I would just add that that's not necessarily for David McDowell. There are other legal fees that are sometimes incurred by departments. So when it says legal, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be used for McDowell Falk. We sometimes have to include other attorneys in that fee.
Thank you.
Okay. Almost. On community initiatives, page 31, economic development has gone up $15,000 to $65,000. I know $50,000 on Byard's budget was for the Whitney Phone Center. I was just wondering what that extra $15,000 is for.
And Mr. Mosley?
I believe that's part of the Medline contract, I believe. I'll have to check on it, but I believe it's part of the
Okay,
Medline
can you do
contract.
that and get back to?
Yeah, that's why, with the line item, everything broken down. Also, that $32,732 lease in community initiatives ends on May 1st. It's for the 4th Street building. Is it going to be renewed? And who are we leasing it from? I don't quite understand that. I did notice that it's expiring May 1st.
Yeah, is that one of the HPRA, Historic Prattville Reed? So without the mayor, does any of the staff?
It's on there on each budget.
HPRA owns it, the city leases it, and it's where cultural arts is.
Okay, so that's the
church or the old church or whatever it is in the community theater.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, that church where
okay.
the Kelly unit
Okay.
is.
Since it's expiring on May 1st, how does that work out in the budget since we only have basically 2 more months? What I'm saying is it going to be automatic? Does it automatically be renewed then?
I don't know that level of detail. I'm sorry.
Right. Okay. Also, I did notice something too. The total for the community initiatives in the aggregate budget summary is listed as $568,093, whereas in the actual budget it's $578,093. So it's off $10,000. So in the aggregate, yeah. So the latter is correct. It's $10,000 more. All right. Last but not least. All right. There are many other areas I could have touched on, but I want others to be able to speak. I will close with, I think this budget does not need to be approved next Tuesday, March 1st. Mr. Arco will not be here, and every councilman should vote on this budget. Also, you will be getting a lot of questions and ideas tonight that could be incorporated. 2 weeks is not too long to wait for something of this dire importance. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Finnegan. Ms. Cummins.
Patricia Cummins, 1208 Kenwood Court in Prattville. Good evening, gentlemen. Just a few questions. First of all, if the sales tax increase is not approved, what would the impact be on the budget? How much revenue will we not have if that does not get approved?
Yes, Councilman Reniger.
Mr. Cummings, 1 cent generates right at $4 million per year, 12-month period. if we enacted that sales tax increase of 1 cent effective April the 1st, we anticipate an increase of right at $2 million.
$2 million.
Yes, ma'am.
So if we don't, if that is not approved, then $2 more million has to come out of the budget?
Yes, ma'am. We'll have to back $2 million probably plus out of the 33,663,671 that you see on the budget.
Okay.
Which means that services will have to be cut.
Okay. And the same thing, what about the fee, the $10 fee for wastewater?
Same thing.
How much is it? I guess it's going to generate, what, $1.3 million?
We anticipate from this point to the end of this fiscal year, $640,000.
For the remainder of this year?
For the remainder of this year.
Okay.
So you could roughly double that for a full year.
Okay.
And once again, if we don't have it, we're in quite a tight.
We have a line of credit of $1 million that comes due on March 31st. I didn't see any provision in the budget for the payment of that $1 million. There is a provision for $31,000 in interest. Have you already, or has someone contacted the bank to be assured that the bank will roll this over?
Mr. Mosley, you want to take care of that?
It's a revolving line of credit, and it renews every year.
So you just roll it, you just pay the interest?
Yes, ma'am.
When do you think you'll be able to pay some principal?
We've started using some of it just to keep the line active. We paid down $600,000 and drew it back out just to keep activity on the line to keep the credit worthiness up, so it looks more attractive to the bank.
Okay. Also, the $3.1 million that was borrowed in October last year, shortly after the budget, I don't see any provision in this budget for the payment of the $3.1 million or the interest on it. It's not provided for in the budget. You have a debt service fund. The debt there is $4.9 million, and then you have the debt that's paid from the general fund, and it's, I think, 2.5. It's about a total of $7 million. However, that other 3.1 makes it over $10 million. But there's no provision in the budget for that 3.1 million.
You might want to stay up there.
Yeah. We did not include the 3.1 in the other financing sources because it would make the revenue number look a lot larger, and so therefore we didn't account for it coming out.
Which means you're going to have to cut another 3.1 out of the budget.
No, there's no revenue where actually we got the money this year. So if we actually had the money coming in this year, it would be in the revenue numbers on here because that's roughly how it's classified on these statements.
Yes, but loan proceeds are not income.
I know they're not income,
but you still have to pay it this year whether you've got the money or not.
I know that, but we got the money in, but it's not in here shown as revenue, where technically it is not revenue. I understand it's a transfer, it's a financing source, but it would be included on that here, because if you look on here, loan proceeds, lease proceeds are in here also, but there's also the expenditures for those leases, for those products that the lease is paying for.
But you're still going to pay $3.1 million. Where is the money coming from?
The money is in here.
Where? The money is not in here. You've got $33.6 million. You've got $33.6 million going out, and none of it includes that $3.1 million, Mr. Mosley.
If you balance your checkbook and you get a $100 deposit, but you also write a $100 check, it washes. That is the case with the budget.
You put the money in last year's and you spent it last year. You have to pay for it this year. Do you understand what I'm saying, gentlemen?
The money,
the $33.6 million in revenue does not, when you turn and you add up all your expenses in your general fund and your debt service fund, that totals the revenue 33.6. Mm-hmm. You have a payment of $3.1 million to make. It's not in here. So you got to find another 3.1 million unless you have some in your debt service fund.
And Mr. Mosley, you're saying that it's covered?
The money came in the 2010-2011 fiscal year, and it's going out the 2010-2011 fiscal year.
Okay. Ms. Cummins, that may be something that we need to talk afterwards about.
Yeah. Okay. Alrighty, can you tell me about the rebates, the sales tax rebates? How are they? I know they made a change this year and they included them in gross revenue.
Speak toward somebody's, yeah.
Yeah, there was a change made in accounting for the sales tax rebates this year. In prior years, they had been netted out of your sales tax. This year, you're reporting it gross, and then you'll have an expense item. Can you tell me where that's accounted for in this budget?
Yeah, Mr. Mosley.
Which page are we referring to?
Is it the 855,000?
That is correct.
It is?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So the 855,000 is the actual sales tax rebates. Okay. That's really, I think, all I really had, other than that on the online you can go to the debt service and you can look at all of the loans. And the bank trust loan for the roof, the online, the amortization schedule shows that the principal amount due is almost 117,000. But on this budget, it shows it's only 27,000. So I wondered why the payment had been altered, if maybe that had been refinanced or something.
That debt schedule was incorrect. The payments are supposed to be quarterly, not monthly, and that's been reflected on here. And I will make sure that that gets corrected online.
Okay, that's all.
I appreciate your eagle eye.
Pardon?
You know, I appreciate your eagle eye, and your questions are very helpful.
Okay. I just wondered what impact if these increases don't go through where we were at. And I think I do understand Mr. Mosley's reasoning about the
checkbook thing?
Yeah, the money. But when I borrow money, I never think of it as income.
But I'm sincere. I appreciate your eagle eye.
Thank you.
Ms. Cummins.
Ms. Cummins, Councilman Wood had a...
Because she's my constituent, I want to ask her a question. Now, I appreciate you because you email me all the time about things. Just for observation purposes, and you've given a lot of information, I just want to, where would you think we would be as an accountant, am I correct, if we do not raise taxes and raise these fees? Just in your mind, what do you think would happen with the city?
I really, honestly, although I don't like to, especially the sales tax, I really have a problem with that because of how it's going to affect our businesses. But if some money is not increased, we can't have the service level that we've had. I mean, I really think it would mean cuts. I still think there's a lot of things in here that could be cut, but I don't know if you can cut another $4 million. So that would be pretty grim. I do think I'd go back and have another look at leisure services. There's really high costs in there, and like the gentleman said earlier, some of us have to give up some fun. I really think some of these programs really need to carry themselves. There's a lot of costs in leisure services that are what we in accounting call indirect costs. You can't really say this cost belongs to the youth program or the adult program. So what you do is you allocate the cost to try and get a better idea of what it's costing you to operate these programs. And I think maybe that's something, don't know that you can do it before this budget, but it should certainly be done in order maybe to reassess the fees that are being charged for some of these programs.
You're talking about the direct and indirect allocated. Yeah, and I know the mayor's looking at that.
And I noticed it especially in leisure services because there's a lot of money in there. I think it's 1 point something million, it's over $1 million. So I think I'd be looking at it, and maybe some fees are going to have to go up other than just fees for sales tax and fees for wastewater. Some of the fund fees need to be increased too. Also for the performing arts. Same thing. You know, way off Broadway, it needs to carry itself. It needs to bring in enough revenue to support it. And if it doesn't, the people that are really interested in that need to contribute. You know, we all need to help offset the cost of the things we want. The city needs to give us our basic services. I like getting my garbage picked up.
Thank you. I don't know anyone that doesn't like getting their garbage picked up. So, who wants to be next? Mr. Mullins?
Have my information again. Dennis Mullins, 111 Daniel Drive, District 7. As always, Mr. President, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I apologize for not able to attend the Tuesday night work session, but have a few comments about what I saw on the news media that night. And they're directed to my good friend, Mr. Argo. You know we're friends, man. Dean, when I saw you make the comment, do we really need a budget? That shocked me, because it goes back to the same statement that I'll quote you on again. Why do we really even need a reserve? Really? And then also another statement that you made, that this is an example, your statement, an example of bad government. Bad government. You made that statement. And I fully agree, at its finest, because we've been living beyond our means with pie in the sky revenue numbers for the past several years. We've been running in a deficit for the past 3-4 years and continually working in a deficit. We cannot continue to work in that deficit. We've got to balance the budget. As I said when I spoke at the last Tuesday night city council meeting, I know we're probably going to have to raise the sales taxes and raise the fees. Do I like it like anybody else? No, I don't. This is my rub. This is the rub I have. That you're asking us for an additional $6 to $7 million of our money, taxpayers' money, just to give to you to use, when in fact it was a watershed event for you. You didn't know anything that was going on. What guarantee do we get as citizens when we give up an additional $7 million worth of revenue that you're going to do the right thing with it this time when you didn't know what was going on in the past? That's a rhetorical question. There's no need for no answer there. That's my rub. You know, I know everybody's going to have some skin in this game. It's like I said when I quoted Dr. Martin Luther King. We're all in the same boat now. We've got to work together. I'm all for the committees. Getting a few, committees together, whether it's on the financing side, doing research. A lot of us have done a lot of research because we do love this city. We've got great ideas. If you'll just listen to it and utilize it, well, we can get FaceTime with any of you guys. We just want FaceTime to put out our ideas, not in a form to where we're limited at. A round table, a night of the round table. Let's sit down and let's talk. Let's throw out our ideas so we can get this train back on the tracks. Now, what I'm still proposing is what I talked about at the last city council meeting. We need to balance this budget within the government, okay? We only have $30 million that we're really working off as of true revenue. We need to balance it within the government. I know it's going to be tough. I don't know how it can be done. But then, once we do that, the additional 1 cent sales tax, the additional $10 fee for the surcharge for the wastewater will be more palatable to us people, because that money can be utilized to go to pay down debt. We need a reserve because we don't ever know when we might have another tornado. We don't know when we might have another great sinkhole. If we have a situation, the only option we have is to go borrow money again, because we have nothing. So to say we don't need a reserve, that's just a bad statement. That's another fine example of bad government. We need a reserve. So we need to work towards getting a reserve. So you balance your budget within the government confines itself, and then you use the additional revenues to help go to pay down debt and to build a reserve. Now, there's many ways to do it. I mean, if I'm not for laying people off. I don't want anybody to lose their job. If we can work towards something to have a 10, 12, whatever the percent pay cut across the board is, so everybody can have, even employees can have a little skin in the game, as the citizens will have to pay for additional fees and increased taxes, then so be it. That's what we've got to do until some point in time to maybe this economy will turn back around and we can get this thing back on the tracks. But everybody's got to put into this. Like I said, I'm not for the increases, but if it's got to be done, we need to utilize it to pay down debt and to build a reserve, not to balance the budget on. Because if you balance the budget with it, then we'll never get nowhere in the subsequent years. We're keeping a status quo. We'll never go to be building a reserve. So my suggestion to you gentlemen is let's build some committees. I'm saying let's not, I'm like you, Councilman Argo, let's not be hastily on approving this budget. I don't think this is a good budget that I've looked at. I'm off track here, I do have one question on this budget. On the $2 million, on the bond proceeds issued, $2 million that was in the budget that was passed previously that was repealed. It's not in this budget. Where did that $2 million go? I mean, it was a revenue stream that was approved in the last budget, and now it's not in the new budget. $2 million, that's a lot of money. Where's the $2 million? Is that another one of those things that you just got to clear the air with because it was a fictitious number you plugged in there to try to balance the budget? I'm just making a statement. I mean, it's not in here. Is it another? I'm just asking. It was in the previous, and it's not in this one.
I didn't do the previous budget. I had no hand in it. But
I'm sorry.
No, it's not.
Directed to you.
No, it's fine.
I apologize.
But this is true numbers and what we're expecting to do this year.
My question is where's the $2 million? It was. I know you didn't have anything to do with the previous budget, but it was in here, $2 million. Now it's not in this budget. Just like the firefighter money, firefighter grant money was in the previous budget. It's not in this budget. You said it was to clear it out. Is it the same situation here, just to clear it out?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So here we are. So now let's not be hastily in trying to approve this budget. I would hope that you would want to make some other appointments with some of the members that you heard from out here to maybe have this round table with Mayor Gillespie, and let's talk about how we can move this city forward.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Mullins. Next. You can't go twice if somebody... Mr. Graham, just hold on if you can.
I'm Charlie Graham. I live at 126 Holly Court. Just to comment on a couple of things that happened earlier today. I've done some research on the subject, and I agree with Councilman Argo. There's not a law that requires a budget, but it's generally accepted and generally expected that you'll start preparing one July, August, and have one by the end of September. And we all know the value of a budget. Any plan is better than no plan at all, and it gives all your department heads targets to shoot at and get under. I'd like to preface my comments by acknowledging that Councilman Bowles and Councilman Strickland were not parties to the creation of our dire financial encumbrances. Councilman Miller was recently quoted as saying something to the effect that he was earnestly soliciting input from citizens, and I thought to myself at that time that was a splendid transition from other situations that I've experienced at council meetings. I understand that you may also be soliciting additional financial input from citizens as well. I see things happening from year to year, like you can't fund the pension plan. You need to change the rules on the pension plan because it is undeniably unsustainable. You started in 2001 with a big 2010 plan and unfunded annexations. You had a decade to augment infrastructure to accommodate for it, and you blew it. You had to raise the garbage rates on all citizens to bail you out on this and other problems that you had created. The only favorable comment that I saw in the 2010 audit was that sanitation was doing okay since you overcharged the citizens. Now here we are again. You're getting nowhere with debt satisfaction. Your long-term debt went up in 2010. You obtained most of this debt by suing the citizens for it, and now you want the citizens to bail you out. You want to raise sales tax. I'm not so sure that this won't be a shot in your foot on this deal. If it turns out to be a net effect, that net effect will turn out to be a major reduction for your local retailers. I would imagine that Walmart is one of your major sales tax contributors. And there's another one closer to my house. You want to surcharge each household $120 a year on sewage because your economic development endeavors may never show a return on investment and you can't afford to do your household maintenance. It appears that you sit here and annex multitudes of developments and allow construction of apartment complexes without any knowledge of whether your infrastructure will accommodate. It appears that you've overlooked and failed to maintain and upgrade the wastewater treatment plants. So you come to us again to bail you out. One of the least expensive things that you could have done in the last 3 years would have been to rebuild the transfer station. That would have been a guaranteed profitable investment. That guarantee was backed up by existing contracts, and you let it slip through your fingers. You can always charge the citizens for your incompetence. It appears that you have cost overruns on grant programs last year. You'd better curtail this activity. You're obviously incapable of bringing the projects in within the grant funds. It disgusts me that you seek your financial resolutions from the citizens in lieu of from within the government. The biggest part of your pie lies in salaries and benefits. And that grew 7.5% in 2010. It needs to shrink dramatically in 2011. Furloughs are not the answer. If your employment only contains essential employees, how can you institute furloughs and not compromise services to citizens? This will not fix your financial woes, but you need to cut all salaries and benefits 10% immediately. Your health care costs can be adjusted by additional employee premiums and copays. Their Cadillac policies are not affordable for you in your circumstance. You may need to go to the legislature to do something about the pension plan. Backing up to health care cost. You need to have an understanding with your employees that if a carrier intends to increase rates next year, that the employees will have to cover the increases. In unsubsidized private enterprise, employees anticipate corrections every year. You need to maintain hiring and wage freezes indefinitely. There are a lot of unemployed people that would love those jobs at 90%. and that pension plan. You may need to go to a 401k system or something. You may even need to go to the legislature to gain approval to change something. Obviously, you cannot sustain your current obligation, and the future will not be better. Don't look at us to sustain it for you. We have our own household problems. That $400,000 raise that you gave back in 2009 was ludicrous. I don't have any earthly idea what your thought process could have been at that time, and I don't want to know because it might be contagious. Your long-term debt increased in 2010. Your cost of general government increased. You continue to refinance old debt because your expenses are so great you cannot service what you have. You have been operating in the red too many years. You have slept through it. Wake up and do the job you were elected to do and quit dabbling in private enterprise. You have proven that none of you are smart enough to do that cost effectively for the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Graham. Hang on, Miss Meliska. Yes, ma'am.
I am Sue Rector. I live on Summer Hill Road. I've been here for 24 years. I'm not a normal regular Prattvillean. I have been transplanted here through being a wife of the military. We were in the military for 14 years, and of course we didn't have to worry about all the stuff that was going on at the time. We made 14 moves in 14 years, and it hurt us when we came out here. We're living in a trailer, not a house. And because none of us could hold a job more than 10 years like some of y'all have had to keep a job for 10 years, y'all are extremely lucky. We've had to bounce from job to job. One year you make maybe $10, the next year it's down to $5 because of the other recessions and all this sort of stuff going on. We are still having to pay for this. When our car breaks down, we got to fix it. We cannot go to the mechanic because we do not have the money to fix the dadgum car. We've got one car between us right now. I've got relatives here that have to go to Timbuktu, which means you got to drive 42 miles one way to go to work. You can't just be driving back and forth to Prattville and not worry about the gas going up. That's another thing. The gas is going to go up. Food is going to go up. And Lord knows what else is going to go up. Another thing was we're in a recession. We were hoping to come out of it, but now we got a war going on, and Egypt fighting, and this is going on, and that's going on, and it's not going to stop. One thing that Mr. Argos said is a lot of people will not shop locally if we have a higher tax. I fully agree. Montgomery had a higher tax, which was, I think it was 9 or 10 cents about a year or two ago, and some of the businesses have moved to Timbuktu, so to speak, because they don't want to pay the higher tax. A raise in the taxes is going to erase our competitive advantage that we've got now. We've got people in Tallahassee, we've got people in Montgomery, we've got people in Lord knows where else. They're coming here to do their shopping, and if we keep praying to the Lord that He'll help straighten things out, maybe we'll come out of the recession. Y'all can be helped. We can be helped. Things might turn around. But we've got to have faith. We've got to have prayers. I don't know what is going on around here. And we've let go of 5 people, which has given Prattville's getting a bad reputation. They had a bad reputation when I came out here in '84. All I could see was businesses closing left and right, and I did not want to live here. But because we were military, we were stuck here. It's like Mr. Argos says, there's no rule that you need to operate with a budget. Apparently, Jim Byard was trying to do his best that we was coming out of the recession and things was looking up and we were getting the stores in, but apparently not all the storekeepers wants to run the stores like we were hoping for. we were hoping to create a separate entity to oversee the wastewater or the sewer. We paid $17 last year. What's going to happen next year? Are we going to have to pay more money, another rate going up? I mean, we got gas prices going up now. What's going to happen next year with all this stuff going on? The things that we had to do, because we're on a limited budget ourselves, we had to replace a serpentine belt in our own car. And if you haven't replaced a serpentine belt, I tell you what, it is a bear. And another thing I've had to go through since I've been here, I've worked in Montgomery. I drove a 52 Chevy Sedan Deluxe to Montgomery, to the Whitfield Foods, and I was working as a cleaning lady at the time, which I didn't mind that. But the state people in their state great cars looked at my car and they said it was an accident looking for a place to happen. I had news for them. That old 52 Chevy was stronger than their cars. Of course, it may look like I was driving an army tank, but I tell you what, it was a lot safer than their cars, I'll guarantee you that. It had a hole in the floorboard. There was no air conditioning, no radio. I mean, we have gone through HE double toothpicks trying to make things, the money things go straight here. And a raise in the wastewater again and again and again, that ain't going to get it. That just ain't going to get it. And that's all I got to say.
Thank you, Ms. Rector. Who wants to be next? Yes, sir.
How you doing tonight? My name's Stan Fairchild, 1263 Huey Street, Prattville. I've sat here and observed tonight. It looks as if 90% of the people that come here you know specifically. A lot of us here, how many people here have been here over 5 years in the community? Over 20 years.
Mr. Fairchild,
okay.
Yeah, if you could
I'm
address
sorry.
the
Well,
council.
For
I'm
20,
sorry.
20 years, most of these people have been here. I've been here 5. I came here military, chose to leave a great place in Virginia to come here after my overseas tour, moved my family out of a great area. All I heard was the great things about Prattville. I came here in the time in 2006 when the rates of the houses were skyrocketing. I bought an older home that was high priced. The closest home to it, newer, at the same size, was $100,000 more. So I chose to go ahead and buy that home. Well, now, like the other gentleman stated about the assessments, you know, he talked about raising millage rates. I don't agree with that. Don't agree with the tax rates. Because since 2008, I haven't received an assessment. At that time, my house was rated $20,000 more than I can sell it. It's $40,000 less than that I can sell it at. But nobody's come out and reassessed my house in 3 years. The issues I'm seeing here, because this is my first council meeting coming, I seen the concern when it said $60 million. I said, I got to get out and see what's going on here, because being in the military, we were off set budgets, 5-year plans. How many people on this board have been here 4 years on this board? Anybody? Okay, everybody up there. Did we not see this coming? That's my question to everybody. Did we not see this coming 5, 6 years ago? And why wasn't it addressed then? Because if you're $10 million in debt 5 years ago, and you're seeing the economy the way it started going in 2008, we knew at this point 3 years later it was going to get worse. And like many of these people have addressed tonight, we're getting hit up for it as a taxpayer in the city. And I don't mind things if it's going to increase budget and be better for the area, just like when Bass Pro Shops came in. It was seen as the thing to increase the area, to increase the thing. We're going to give them $10 million back in tax rebates, but it's supposed to help the area. All these big stores, the big mall that was built up on top of the hill across from Bass Pro, we've still yet to facilitate or to occupy that entire facility. So at what point was the council going to say, hey, we got a budgeting problem somewhere? Why wasn't it addressed before? That's my question. Why did it take so many years before somebody identified the serious problem we have?
That's a good question, and I think a lot of us are thinking there are things we might have done differently. You know, I don't know that anyone predicted the economic downturn that was, you know, catastrophic, has become catastrophic, is affecting the globe, the nation, the state, the city. But it's just a whole lot of things that I think I could personally tell you that I wish I had, in hindsight, looked at differently.
Well, I understand everybody didn't see the 08 falling. If I'd have seen that, I wouldn't have bought my house in 06 here.
True.
But like he's identified, you know, we're paying assessments. I've been paying taxes for 3 years on saying my house was worth $20,000 the year I bought it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, hey, it's increasing. But now I'm being told it's $40,000. I can sell it for $40,000 less than what I paid for it. So that'd be $40,000 to $45,000 in the hole. But I'm still paying the same tax from 3.5 years ago. So that's my concern, you know, was that, like some of these have said, where can we cut? Being in the military, I've seen areas of cut budgets. When the man addressed the issue about the patrol car, I was a law enforcement officer. I know that you're going to sit there. You have computers operating the vehicles. You have your lights operating the vehicle. You can't not sit there with it running at some point if you're doing patrol duties. Other times you can turn it off. So I can understand that. But the take-home car, I think that would be a great thing to possibly cut, or only let so many people take them home. But also look at the budget too. A lot of areas I work now, they have people walk through at the end of the day, turn all the lights off. I've come downtown many times at 3 or 4 in the morning and seen half the lights in this district on. That's a bill we're paying again. We're paying the light bill. The water usage. Right now, every one of y'all has a bottle of water. Did that come out of our budget? Couldn't you have gotten tap water and poured a glass up there like we do at church? I mean, that's the questions I see. And I'll start coming to all these meetings because now that I'm a community, I decided to retire here. And when I retired, I did not expect it to be like this, but I'm here to grow, and I want to see the city continue to grow. But those interdepartmental things you can look at, from paper, turning lights off, water, you don't have to buy. You know, most places have water coolers. Use your tap water. If we're paying $10 extra in sewage and cleaning this water up, hey, it's safe to drink. Get it straight out the faucet. So that's all my concerns are, is just to, you know, let's work together on this. But I'll be more happy. Who is actually my district? Okay. Thank you, sir.
You said Huey Street. Yeah, Councilman. Yeah, hang on. Councilman Fink.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention one thing, that the appraisals and the
Yes, sir.
assessments are done at the county.
Yes, sir.
We don't handle those, so the county commission is actually the best authority to talk to about whether or not your house has been assessed and if it's been assessed in a timely manner or at the right amount. And I believe that property taxes are also things that have to be taken before the people for vote, I believe. But we can confirm that with David McDowell, so I believe
That's
that's
what I say.
the
I
case.
know that after I get an assessment in 07, 08, and all of a sudden they stop giving an assessment.
Yeah, and that's a county function.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, I'm going to Miss You almost missed it. All right, you and then Miss Maliska, and I didn't see any other hands, so.
Paula Barlow, 3020 Inglenook Road, Melbourne. I've heard a lot of comments here tonight that there's too many employees in the city, that they make too much money. There was an article in the Montgomery Advertiser that said while all the population in Alabama has decreased, there were 5 counties that had increased. Autauga County was one of those. They increased 25%. You cannot increase your population by 25% and not expect your services, your essential services, to also increase. The city employees here are taking furloughs. That's anywhere from $100 to $600 a month for some of these employees. That's $1,500 for the 6 months that this is employed in. These city employees are also going to pay these taxes that are increased, and most of them are going to pay the wastewater fees, along with these city councilmen that are up here. You're all going to pay those same fees. So where everyone's saying that you need to take cuts, you need to do stuff, I understand that y'all are taking some of those same cuts because these are affecting y'all also, the same as they're affecting us. When you get down to it, the reality of this is $1 for every $100 you spend in taxable money. Yes, I understand that people like the cheaper sales tax here. I have family that's out of town, and I talk to numerous people. They're not coming here just because it's a 1.5% sales tax from different areas. They're coming here for the safety. You look at the areas that are around us and you look at the people that are coming here. They're coming to this area because they have a safety here. They don't have to worry about being robbed or mugged or their cars being broken into. Yes, that happens here, but it's a lot less than some of the surrounding areas. You cut your public safety, and you're cutting that service also. $1 for every $100 you spend. That's what this increase in the tax is. That's taxable income. That's not your water bill. That's not your gas bill and power bill. That's taxable. That's your groceries and stuff. There's not many people in here that are going to spend over $500 a month on those items. So it's $5 a month to get this city back on track where it needs to be. The city employees are willing to take this cut and to get this city back on track because we believe in it. And I believe these citizens believe in this same thing. So I wanted to bring the real numbers up here on what this tax increase is. $1 for every $100 that's spent. When you talk percentages, it scares people. Put it in something that they can understand. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Maliska, you're the last. One question. Despite the fact that you moved out of my district with your new house.
Sorry, I had to move where I could move. This is from Mr. Argo. You said that you trusted the people that gave you the information. Okay? When I was working, if I gave wrong information or lied or cheated anybody, I would have lost my job. Why aren't these people losing their jobs because they've been lying to this council and the entire city of Prattville? That's my question.
I won't. It is inappropriate for me to comment on personnel matters, but I assure you it's been addressed.
Now, do I trust you or do I find out for myself?
Well, you and I know each other well enough to know that you're going to go check anyway, so that's what I would do.
Well, I'm just saying, you said trust is a funny thing. We trust you, you trusted these people, and we were all lied to. Why aren't they losing their jobs?
I can't comment on personnel matters. All I can say it's being addressed.
Well, I hope you will elaborate later on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Maliska. I wanted to say thank you to everybody that came out tonight, and I, again, want to tell the city employees how much I appreciate what they do every day. I know this has been a stressful time for the city employees in particular, and that's something I just want to tell you how much I respect you and value what you do. And I think in a similar way, similar sentiment for the citizens. Nobody likes the instability and what's around the corner, and everybody's looking for some firm ground, and I hope that we continue to move in that direction, and I just want to tell you I appreciate each and every one of you. So with that, we are...
Whoa.
Oops.
I'm out.
Councilman Fink.
I'd like to have a comment. I guess I'd like to kind of follow that up with what Tom said, and I'm going to purposely look at our city employees when I'm doing this. I appreciate y'all more than you know. I also hope that you know that I respect you as individuals as well. And I appreciate the comments that the public makes. I appreciate it, and I do. I appreciate it. And people can be as condescending. They can say whatever they want to me. I'm fine with that. I'm an elected official. But I would appreciate it if the citizens would use some refrain from being condescending to our employees who are our backbone. Please.
Thank you, Councilman Fink. Councilman Argo.
Thank you, sir. Since there were a lot of comments aimed at me tonight, which I certainly understand, I volunteered for this, so I understand. But I want to make a couple of comments. Number one, I want to make it very clear. I never said we didn't have to have a budget. What I said was there is no rule or law that requires a budget. So I appreciate everybody coming up here and telling me that that was a terrible statement. I appreciate that. But that's not what I said. I think we ought to have a budget. I think that we ought to have a budget that we can believe in and get behind and that we know is accurate. That's what I believe. I also believe that when I made the statement that we didn't have to have a budget, what I was talking about is exactly what I tried to explain at the beginning, and that is the moment we approve a budget, then that is how much money we are going to spend, period. And I know, or let me take that back, my wife knows that if she gives me $100, I'm going to go spend $100. I'm not going to put $25 away in a rainy day account. I'm going to spend the $100. My point is, as long as this council does not have a budget before it, we must approve every expenditure outside of salary, benefits, and everyday expenses of running this city. That's the greatest control anybody can have. So please don't misunderstand me when I say we don't have to have a budget. I was not trying to say that we didn't need one. We do need a budget. My argument is we don't need to rush in to have a budget just so we can say, hey, we got a budget. We've got to have a budget that's realistic, that is sustainable, and to build on honest, accurate numbers. And I believe that we're getting there every single day that we have this opportunity to gather and listen to you and talk to each other and talk to Mr. Mosley and others. We're getting there. I also want to make a statement to my good friend Dennis. I never said we didn't have to have a reserve. If you can find that I said that somewhere, I apologize. I did not say that. If I did, I didn't mean it. Okay? We desperately need a reserve. We need a rainy day account. The last thing I want to say is this. I want to make it very clear. I said it the other night, and I'm going to say it again. I am opposed to a sales tax increase. I am not opposed to building a budget that has increased revenue in it. If that's what we have to have, so be it. I appreciate Paula coming forward because she's exactly right. Most of the people that came to this microphone tonight assume that we're not citizens, that we don't pay taxes, that we don't participate in this community. My children go to school here. I go to church here. I shop here. So I participate. My point about the sales tax is that I don't believe, personally, no disrespect to my council members or to my mayor who's not here, I do not believe we have explored every option before us before we take on a sales tax increase. That's my point. I don't fault anybody for supporting a sales tax. It is easy, it's quick, and it's immediate. Absolutely. All I'm asking my council members, my mayor, my friends who are here to support me, let's slow down. If we don't have a budget on April 1 or May 1 or June 1, we've actually saved money because we didn't have a budget where money was put aside to be spent. No disrespect to the department heads. I have participated in appointing every single one of these men and women. I believe in what they do. I know that they do good jobs. But I know that they are entrusted with money given by this council, and if we give the money to them, they're going to use it to the best benefit of the citizens that they can. But if they don't have a budget, then they have to come before the council and say, I really need to do this. This is something we must do. And then the council has an opportunity to act on that. I'll sum it all up to say this. Let's explore every option before us. Whether it's a wastewater fund, whether it's an enterprise fund that the mayor talked about, whether we do go back to one garbage pickup a week, whether we look at curbing leisure services, which I'm not an advocate of that because I know a lot of children in this city depend on leisure services. But what I'm saying is, until we have a conversation that says our minimum level of service is X, we don't need to be talking about revenue. Once we establish the minimum level of service that we demand and expect, then we can go look at revenue and make sure it matches our needs. That is the only thing I said, and I still believe in that, and I stand behind it. Thank you.
I meant to say the 5-minute deal applied to the councilman, too. Anyone else?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, a motion to adjourn. Second, we are adjourned. Thank you.